So if you're doing this on your own and you start thinking this is not the best pool, go ahead and get a vendor. I recognize that it is a little bit of money up front, but it's going to make a huge difference to your overall earning. Like, do you want to open and make $10,000 your first month, or do you want to open and make $40,000 your first month? A few grand to recruit this person makes that difference.
Chamberlynn, welcome back.
Thank you for having me.
AKA Two James. What else? What else do we call you around these parts?
The Oracle.
Boss? The Oracle. Yeah, the Office Oracle. So for those of you guys that don't remember, I had Chamberlynn on, I don't know, it was several months ago. And she is an executive assistant, and she probably has a little scope creep by this point, so I won't even try to tell you all the things she does for us, but she's invaluable. And yeah, so welcome back. Actually, your episode was very popular.
I'm very excited to be back on the pod.
Yeah, man. Yeah, last time somebody else invited me to be a guest on their podcast based on listening to our podcast about why you would hire and how to find an executive assistant.
You're welcome.
I know, exactly, right? So look at that, like changing the world, one podcast at a time. So in the spirit of Did You Knows, do you have one on deck?
Absolutely. Did you know that raccoons feel through their hands more than they use their vision, which is why they dip all of their potential food objects in water, because that heightens their ability to feel.
Really?
Really.
You think it would make it like mushier?
Well, that's why when you give a raccoon cotton candy, it's hilarious because it dissolves in water and they have no idea where it goes.
Oh, really? Oh, you know way too much about raccoons than you should. By the way, anyone listening, like Chamberlynn's dream is to have a pet raccoon. So I'm going to try to make that happen for her at some point. I don't know how, but we'll figure it out.
My fence is being installed today, so I'm ready for my pet raccoon.
That's right. We'll build you a little, that's an indoor animal though, right?
Absolutely.
It'd be like a giant cat.
Yes.
Yeah.
Better than a cat.
And they can be pretty sweet.
They're smart.
I've seen people with pet raccoons and they look really sweet. And then I've seen like feral raccoons and they look terrifying.
There was a raccoon attack last night in Atlanta. It was on the news.
Did you see the one where the lady is out in like Connecticut and her daughter is like going to school? And so she opens the door, goes out onto the porch and is turning around to like shut the glass storm door. And this thing just runs out of the bushes and like starts sawing up her leg. Like, zzz, and she's screaming bloody murder. And her mom, who's a boss, comes out on the porch, snags the raccoon by the scruff and is holding it at arm's length while it wiggles and kicks. And it's big. And sends the girl back in, gets all the doors secured and everything, and then takes 2 steps and launches this thing like all the way across the yard. I'm like, that lady's badass.
If it attacked one of my children or one of my dogs, I would absolutely do that.
Yeah. She just snagged it like it was nothing and held it at arm's length, telling her daughter what to do while not even looking at it. And it was like freaking out. And then she just chucked it. It was so good.
This is why women rule the world.
I know. No kidding. So did you know that the human body will determine whether or not someone is attractive in a second or less? 1 second or less. Isn't that crazy?
Whoa.
Exactly. It makes you wonder. I'm like, I won't worry about getting dressed for this thing, or I won't worry about this. But I mean, first impressions are so important.
I got to ask the question again. How did you get Andrea then?
I know. Well, I was running really fast, so she got a blurred vision of me. I went by in like 1 second and she was like, maybe. And then later it was like too late. You know, her body had already told her, hell yes, even though her brain was like, hell no, but the body always wins, right? The body's bigger than the brain. I don't know if you knew that.
Yep,
So,
I have heard that.
Kind of like the elephant and the rider from Switch, like in your decision-making process. Like the elephant's ginormous, that's your emotions. The rider is the brain, the logic. It's a lot smaller. So, and as they say in the book, the elephant does what the elephant does.
It's true.
So there you go. All right. So today, all kidding aside, because we could probably just jibber jabber all day, we're going to talk about I guess our hiring process, and I really would maybe also frame this as like best practices for hiring, step by step, right? And having Chamberlynn on the team gives us a ton of bandwidth. So she's going to walk you through our hiring process. Also, what we teach our franchisees. So if you're a potential franchisee, one of the questions we often get, and it's a great question, is where am I going to find people? Because I would say the people you hire are going to be the biggest predictor of your success or not. And yeah. And also for like again, for anybody that's listening that's not an Alloy franchisee, but if you're a potential franchisee, this is our process. So it should give you some comfort. So I'll let you have it. Where do you want to start?
I guess we'll start with understanding that Alloy is a customer service business, so who you hire is imperative. This person isn't working in the back of a warehouse packaging things. Like, this is what we do. It's personal training, but anybody can go and buy a kettlebell. What they can't do is find somebody who's fun and shows them how to use it and makes heavy lifting enjoyable every time they come in. So you need to make sure that you put a lot of time and effort into hiring because it is imperative to the success of your Alloy studio. Sometimes we like to say, oh, I have a friend who's a trainer. Fantastic. It's great to have friends, but there is a process to vet them and make sure that they are the candidate that's proper for the Alloy studio. And in any business, it is a business relationship. This is how you make money. Money does make things a bit complicated. So you want to make sure that your friend can follow policy and procedure and is okay being treated like any other candidate because they will be treated like you're the employer and they're the employee. So making sure that that relationship can withstand that and still be viable and they can still bring forth, their best effort because everyone around you is saying they're the best trainer, they're the best trainer. So I think that's the biggest thing is really put time and effort into hiring, 100%.
Well, and what we've done is spend an inordinate amount of time defining like these positions, and there's not many. I mean, the great news is it's a low labor model, but to your point, any business, if you're going to be an absentee owner, which means you're going to own it and you're going to give them some bandwidth, but you're going to rely on your people to run it, they've got to be the right people. And we have processes in place, which we'll discuss. And I will tell you, if you are the type of person that thinks you have a good, and I'm air quoting gut, like trust your gut, you don't. There's a great book also written by Dan and Chip Heath called Decisive. And there's like a decision tree that you use, and data is one of those things. And so you cannot just trust your gut because inevitably you end up hiring people that are exactly like you, and that may work or it may not, depending, right? And so you might just say, I've got a good feel about this person, but I'm telling you, if you don't run a process, it doesn't matter how you feel. I mean, you could feel different because you're hungry that day, honestly. I mean, your emotions will not always tell you the truth. And so, and your gut's not as great as you think it is. Trust your gut's great for Warren Buffett picking a stock, but he's not trusting his gut. He's trusting 80 years of experience that he's had looking at stocks, right? That's his gut. If you haven't hired for the fitness business, you're not trusting your gut. Run the process. And so we're going to talk about that process.
So step one is I would highly recommend using our vendors. We have vetted different type of recruiting vendors. We have a headhunter. We have a recruitment firm. So 2 different processes. And once you come on board, I have a great explanation of exactly who they are, the discounts you get being an Alloy franchisee, and essentially what's going to work best for you, your personality, and the time you do have to commit to this. And if you're going to go it alone and you're going to recruit yourself, you need to make sure that you have ample time. You need to make sure, especially with personal trainers, because really good personal trainers...
There's 2 positions though, right? So your first hire is director.
Yes.
And that's a different skill set than just trainers, right?
100%. Going in for your trainers, you want to make sure that you're moving quickly on them. If they submit an application, instantaneous response is really important because really good trainers move fast. Your director of operations should be treated more like a business partner style interview.
Right.
So,
like in the Chick-fil-A terms, like the operating partner. So they're not necessarily going to own any stake, but you should look at them as someone with an entrepreneurial spirit who can run the business, can be the face of your small business, right? Or that location.
Making sure that they're responsible. So for personal trainers, you can text them, email them, figure out what's going to be best to get through to them because they're bouncing around, they're on the go. But if you're looking for an operating partner, email them. Make sure that they're responsible to email. Make sure that they can establish a normal mode of communication, that they can be consistent in that form of communication, because this person needs to be consistent in running your business and following policy and procedure that is set forth. That's why you buy a franchise. So those things are already done for you. And so I highly recommend reaching out via email. And I recognize that it may not be, quote, the most efficient, but if somebody's looking for a job, they should be monitoring their inbox. They should be checking on their threads. I don't love the chat messages within like LinkedIn or ZipRecruiter. They are actually not as direct as an email. And so email is the most direct and professional form. And that will allow you to then ask them about their schedule, setting up an intro interview, making sure that they know how to receive a Google invite, because you will be having weekly meetings with this person once you get them in the studio and running the operations. They need to know how to use a Google link, unless you're going to meet in person, which I highly recommend, but semi-absentees owners may have to do it virtually. So just making sure that they can accept a calendar invite, manage their calendar, show up to that virtual meeting on time.
I mean, really, the one of the criteria is they have to be organized. And so they have to be able to leverage tech, right? And so this is
your first introduction to, is this person organized? And I never get upset if someone emails me prior to a meeting and says, I've had a conflict come up, because a lot of people I'm interviewing are in current positions and they may not be able to control a meeting coming from work. But what I do expect is them to provide me with an alternative time and to have it still within a reasonable amount of meeting time, and to let me know my boss put a schedule on my meeting that I cannot move. I have to respect your current employer. But what I do not love is 5 minutes before we're supposed to meet, then you let me know. Like, this should have been something that was done at least a couple hours ahead of time. So it lets you know, are they responsive enough? Are they managing their time well enough and respecting your time? So those are just very small triggers just in the first interactions with them to let you know, okay, already setting the tone for what could be a great interview, or already setting the tone where I need to ask questions specifically to time management, to organization, to respect, to accountability.
Well, and I think, if you treat them that way and you don't get that treatment in kind, then you would be crazy to not believe them when they show you who they are. Meaning, if you in some way feel like there's some scarcity, or you hire in spite of whatever those things are, don't be surprised if when they manifest themselves later at scale with customers, which is a big no-no. So yeah, 100%.
If you're feeling forced to hire somebody from that because you're saying, I don't have a large enough candidate pool, then I know that you're not using one of our vendors, because our vendors actually provide me with way too many candidates. I get a little overwhelmed, but I'd rather be slightly overwhelmed with too much great potential than be like pulling at, oh, well, this is the best I can get right now, because that doesn't cut it. So if you're doing this on your own and you start thinking this is not the best pool, go ahead and get a vendor. I recognize that it is a little bit of money up front, but it's going to make a huge difference to your overall earning. Like, do you want to open and make $10,000 your first month, or do you want to open and make $40,000 your first month? A few grand to recruit this person makes that difference.
Right. So, obviously, first step, we have somebody in place that will go and identify candidates, and they're going to use your typical channels, Indeeds and all the others, and LinkedIn. But they also have they've been in the industry for a while, so they might have just local contacts that they know that are in those areas that have reached out to them to say, like, hey, if you see anything that pops up, my skill set, let me know. But it's your job then they're going to cull through the ones. If you just throw a job out on Indeed for personal trainer, as an example, you're going to get so many people that are not qualified, regardless of what you put out there. So use the vendor so that they run interference with the unqualified people. And they know our brand really well. And we've already written the scripts for like these positions. So you don't even have to do that. So it's like, all right, if you're not with Alloy, like, I'll give you Jesse's name. She's our main vendor. So it's Just Fitness Staffing. And her name's Jessie. So if you're not with Alloy, reach out to Jessie and have her. You may have a different position that you're looking for, but she does all things fitness. So I would reach out to her and help craft a message. And it just gives you so much bandwidth. I think she charges, like you said, a couple grand, whatever that is for a week. But normally we get plenty of candidates in the first week, and you got to go through them. And again, you have to be somewhat aggressive. I think in this interesting job market, like, I think people are just you sit back and you're like, hey, if they really want this job, I'm going to make them jump through all these hoops. But remember, you're recruiting your talent on your team similar to how you recruit clients. So you kind of have to market right to talent these days, because you want the right person, and the right person's in high demand. If they're that good, then they're going to be in high demand. I mean, obviously we have a great pay structure that we can recommend, and they're going to get paid above industry average. But if they're that person and they're the right person, they're probably getting a lot of offers and they have a lot of options. So you're going to have to market to them. So keep that in mind, especially some of our franchisees that are a bit older, have been in corporate, where it's like, well, if you want this job, you got to, do these 4 or 5 things. That's just not the atmosphere these days. I'm not saying you can't hold people accountable or whatnot, but you have to sort of market and draw them into the brand, into your team. Would you agree?
Absolutely. That's where
effort on your part.
Effort at the front end, reaching out to them quickly, efficiently, making yourself available. So when I reach out, I always say, I am open Monday, Wednesday, or Friday, whatever my days are. And I just give them huge windows of time. And I say, please let me know what's best for you. Because I want to make them understand that, like, I'm going to be flexible. I want to meet you. Your resume impressed me. I want to explain more about who Alloy is to you. And it's best if we do that in person. And then you have to sell it in that intro interview. I like to keep those between 20 to 30 minutes, never longer than that. but I really do talk about who Alloy is, why this product can, if you put in the effort and have the accountability, sell itself. And I just talk about our culture. So I always talk about our core values in the first introductory interview. And then I always ask them very pointed questions about time management. Do you work well? Do you thrive in an environment of high accountability? Do you thrive in an environment of sarcasm? Because here at the office, we do speak very directly about business matters. We also speak very directly in our sarcasm, and it's what connects us and makes us enjoy working as hard as we do. And so I have to make sure this person can blend with that. So you need to make sure that this person is going to fit into the studio, into the clientele. This is a white glove premium brand. You need to make sure that the person you're hiring does understand how to service premium brand consumers. And so if this is somebody who believes in, you've always got to offer a discount, they are probably not the right person for us. We're already a personal training at, below national prices per hour. So like there is no necessary discount. There is no, you need to prove like I have better personal training than blah, 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 because I have the accountability. I have the technology to keep you accountable even when you're not here. I have the communication metrics so that you and I can stay in contact if you want that. I have the community that's going to help hold you accountable. So when you come in, you get to work out with your best friend. Or if you're like my dad, he just politics around the room and they have to call him in and they're like, hey, Henley, are we going to work out today or just work the room? But he loves doing it. He's 75. It gets him out of my mom's hair. She loves it. It gives him a great schedule for the week. And he does lift. He has gotten stronger. Mowing the lawn has gotten easier for him. It's his favorite thing. He's also a consumer of white glove services. So he loves the way he's treated. As soon as he walks in the door, they're like, Henley, he loves that.
Right.
And so making sure that this person, they don't have to be a consumer of premium products themselves, but they have to understand the value of a premium product. That's who we are. So that is also something to make sure that you communicate in the first round interview.
Well, and a lot of it could show, like, how do they show up? Like, if first round interview, are they dressed appropriately? Like, typically our franchisees are, you have to have some means to be able to invest in a franchise. Mm-hmm. So if you're the investor and you bought into the franchise, you understood the vision of who we're servicing. So just take that lens, right? And you might have a resume that comes across and up on the screen pops this individual. Do they represent what our clientele would appreciate? And you can look at that through the lens of like, hey, you got it. You bought into the investment vehicle. What do you think, right? Do you think that person could service these high-end type of clients, right? Like, do they speak well? Do they look the part? Are they professional, right? All the things, because in some cases, people, they might be really nice. They're just not a good fit. So, and that reminds me, like, next step. So like, all right, bam, we've got a vendor who's going to go out and identify candidates in your market. So you don't have to just blanketly go figure out where to find people. Check. What comes next? Because this next one I think is critical.
After the intro interview, that's where you determine, okay, I want to move forward with the next steps of this person. And that's where we need to figure out, is your core wiring built to have customer service, built to sell, built to manage?
But tactically, what's next?
Oh, well, tactically, yes. You decide like, okay, I need to figure these things out. So this person is worth submitting my best works data assessment to. So you'll wrap up the interview, the very intro interview, and you'll say, I would love to move forward with the next steps of the interview process. Are you comfortable with that? And if they say yes, you explain to them, okay, I'm sending you an email. There's a lot of instructions. Please read them. It is an assessment. People tend to freak out at the word test or quiz because that's not what it is. We're assessing your core nature. So using the word assessment tends to go over better with everyone. And if somebody balks at that and they say like, oh, I don't know about that. I don't do tests or quizzes. Then say, not a problem. That is the next step. If you're not comfortable, I understand. I wish you the best of luck and move on. Don't push it, because a real candidate, a real go-getter understands, I'm spending money on this. You have literally not even met me. We've had a 20-minute virtual call and you're willing to spend money on me to know who I am, to make sure we could work well together. They should appreciate it. Right. So you find those candidates who appreciate it, you send it to them, and then you ask them a question of, either I need this completed by, give them a couple days because it is done on a computer. You do have to have 30 minutes of locked in time.
Is it worth telling them having them commit to you when they'll have it done as another step to know whether or not they can stay on track?
100%. So if I if I interview people on a Thursday, I tell them I have to have it by Sunday. So that Monday I can go through all the reports, look at everything, schedule more interviews.
And so if you don't have it, it's a no-go.
No-go. And then if it's early in the week, like on a Monday, I ask them, would you be able to finish this in the next 3 days? You tell me. And then if they have a very reasonable response of, my schedule is booked until Friday evening, I can do it Saturday morning, perfect. I'll check for it. Let me know as soon as you've completed it. So work with their schedule, especially if they're a goal-getter, a heavy hitter. They probably will have a busy schedule.
Right.
So work with it. But yes, it's the next step of also being able to complete the assessment will give you an idea. Can they follow instructions? There are a lot of instructions to get it set up and operating correctly. And they're all very simple, like make sure you use your same name and email address every time.
Right.
Very simple stuff, but you have to read the instructions. That gives you an indicator. Completing it on time gives you an indicator that A, they are interested in this position still, they're willing to do the work for it, and they can hold themselves to a time management schedule. And so I can't say this enough. You need to use an assessment. And for our Alloy franchisees, we have negotiated an insane rate with BestWorks data. I mean, you get unlimited candidates for $100 for 30 days.
That could be your whole hiring process because that's for a month, right? You're going to have tons of time.
It has always covered it.
Well, and the fact that you wouldn't, I mean, it would make no sense. I mean, we can't necessarily in this regard require it because it's part of the hiring process and that kind of muddies the waters between who they work for. They don't work for us. You're your own LLC. They work for you. But in any business, Alloy or not, if you're not using some kind of a screen on the front end, and the stats that BestWork Data has is it will eliminate around 20% of the people that made it to the second interview. And I will tell you that, we always talk about don't hire people that are exactly like you because you need some, varying personalities. Maybe not that in this case, because you might be someone who would be the right candidate to go in and run your own studio. You just choose not to because you're an investor. And maybe you do match with somebody who's got your same personality. But I will say that there will be cases where you will really like someone and you're hiring them for the director position, and then you run the BestWork Data, and we spent time and money to build what's the ideal personality type to be able to do this job. You run the screen, and it's just a no. And look, it's not always a tiebreaker, but like if you don't consider at least the fact that it's a very scientific test that if it tells you it's not going to be a good fit, it's probably not going to be a good fit. You'll be crazy, right? So why are you not doing it? Plus, to Chamberlynn's point, you're also testing all these behaviors. Can they use technology? Can they get online on time? Are they keeping their commitments? Are they taking it seriously? So it's just a great tripwire to put in place for the real data and for the behavioral parts of it, right?
100%. It is my favorite thing. I love looking at it, understanding there's a portion where if you are concerned about a certain area, they will provide you with specific questions to ask in your next interview to address these things. Because there's something called a coachability alert. And sometimes when you ask people about it, there's different areas where that alert can come up and you'll ask specific questions. Sometimes the answer you get is great. And you're like, it makes sense why the assessment came out this way. And then other times it's like, because this person literally thinks they're perfect. They have no faults, which is a bit concerning when you're entering into a franchise situation because policy and procedure is here. You have to be open-minded to how we do things. We have 3 decades of vetting our systems. We do our systems our way. If you want to do it your own way, go open Joe Schmo Gem.
Yeah, 100%.
Do it yourself.
Yep, makes sense. All right, so they get through the screen. Let's say, like I would say, like if you're a studio owner, you probably want to sit down in front of this person, right? Like live. So you have them in. Now, are we using like we teach them BestWork Data? So that's how we're building our interview criteria, right?
Yes.
Around our get it once it has capacity.
Oh, well, that goes with our EOS. So absolutely. Okay. I recommend going into your second interview. I love a third interview as well. I'm a 3 interview kind of person.
Sure.
But go into your second interview. That could either be virtual or in person, as long as you have your in person before making a decision. That is absolutely imperative.
Body language. I mean, think about someone who you're going to put in front of clients. They're going to be live. And so, if somebody comes in and their body language is weird or what have you, that's going to be off-putting. I mean, I think it's like some 80% of all language is unspoken. So you really need to look for all those tells as well.
100%. So if you're hiring your part-time trainers and coaches, I absolutely would have your director of training handle the intro. Mm-hmm. And then the second after follow-up, answering the BestWorks Data questions if there's concerns. And then have your third in person with all 3 of you. Having the owner present at some point when hiring even your part-time coaches tells them this is a business that we care about. This business is about accountability. I'm here to meet you and make sure that you're going to do a good job with my business that I've also entrusted to my operating partner. Like, I'm not just a ghost, a figurehead that hides away. So it's really important to let them know that this is absolutely how we operate with this accountability and community. And then if you're hiring your operating partner, obviously you may not have anyone else to meet with unless you have, let's say, a 10% investor. If you can, maybe on the second interview, have that investor just sit in. Again, it gives the presence of, this is a big deal. This, especially for your operating partner, this is a really big role. We are asking you to run a business. This is a business that we've put our money into. And for some people, maybe it's not a lot of money. For other people, it's like all their savings. They want to leave a legacy. So it's very important that to everyone we're hiring as an operating partner, this is how important it is. Here we are. We do this together. So for your operating partner, I absolutely would have 3 interviews. Even if your third is like, let's grab a cup of coffee and just make sure that you and I can tell jokes to each other. Just to figure out, can we work together? Can you hold a schedule? Are you willing to go through 3 interviews? Because honestly, that's not a lot. Like as an executive assistant, I've been through 6 rounds of interviews before, making sure because as an EA, they definitely want to test your time management and accountability. But it's one of those where those things matter. Like, are they going to get tired on the third one? Are they going to show up and be like, hey, what's up? I got it in the bag. Like, I don't want that person. I want you to show up. And because every single day you're going to meet with essentially, you're going to know your clients. They'll be the same people. So are you eventually going to be like, oh, hey, Steve? Or are you going to be like, Steve, what's up? Let's go. You got to make sure they can keep that up.
Yep. No, 100%. So, okay. So you're doing this last interview. Are you going to talk about EOS? Like how?
Oh, that comes after the interview.
Okay, so the interview's over, apparently.
Interviews
just to show you how much I know what's going on. Usually I'll just, something will pop, like if we're hiring corporately, we have a similar process, by the way, and something will just pop up on my schedule and it'll say like interview, and I'll just have my canned interview questions and I'll come out and like them or not. But they've already been interviewed by the COO typically. They've been interviewed first by Chamberlynn, so she runs interference, and then it's COO and then me. So yeah, I'm not really sure what the process is. I know for franchisees, but yeah.
So yes, usually I do 3 to 4 interviews. And what I love to do is after they meet with you, if I need to do a recomparison interview, that's fine. Sure. Or I'll call, my top 2 back and say, hey, we really enjoyed meeting with you. We'd like to ask a few more questions. Can you come in?
Yeah, that's a great idea.
Once you have completed your in-persons and you feel that you have met with your candidates sufficiently enough, you hopefully have narrowed it down to about at max 4. That's a lot.
Yeah, really.
I would say
usually
2 to 3
to 2. Yeah.
And you will use the People Analyzer from EOS. So as an Alloy franchisee, you get full EOS training. And I'm talking from the first 90-minute call through the 5-hour training in person. And we also will assist you with L10 meetings all along the way. That's part of our franchise business coaching. So you'll be really engrossed into it. And so the People Analyzer is the best way to figure out right people, right seat. And so you'll list your people, and without giving away too many details, you will list your core values. And then at the end of every single People Analyzer for every company in the world, you have gets it, wants it, and capacity. And those 3 things.
GWC, right?
Yes. Those 3 things have to be a yes. If any of those is a no, it is not the right person for your company. You would be very foolish to hire them. And so those 2 things must be a yes. And for your core values, we went through and ranked it here at headquarters. And so we give you a recommended bar graph of what they should be hitting, but it is a combination of those things. So it doesn't always have to be like a plus for humor with a touch of crazy. Some people are not crazy, and that's okay. Do they have a good sense of humor? And do they embody all the other core values? Then they're probably a really good candidate. And if they have 3 yeses at the end for gets it, wants it, and capacity, sounds great. So you really have to go through, you rank or you rate each of your candidates using the People Analyzer chart. And then at the end of it, you look at each thing, and that helps you unemotionally decide who is truly going to fit best into this system. And so emotions are always hard, and you have to remember, don't feel guilty. Don't feel, oh, but this friend of a friend, it's like, it doesn't matter. This is your business. Do not feel guilty that they were not cut out for this specific position. There's another position out there that they're going to thrive at, be better for. So in a way, if you do hire the person that doesn't line up, you should feel guilty that you're hindering them from an opportunity that might be better for them.
Yeah, because you're putting them in a position to fail. You are. And you're going to be holding them accountable to things that they may not be actually able to do. Right. Cool. All right. So a mechanism to go find the people, a screen based on how they're hardwired. And then obviously there's stuff to fill in on how to handle interviews and the level of conviction and communication style or whatever to get them through these processes. And then lastly, you sit down and do through the lens of EOS, like the GWC interview. And you got to be really honest about either check or minus. And any minuses on the core values, it's just not going to be a good fit long term. So,
and with that meeting, everybody who has had a touch point with this candidate should be involved in that meeting.
In the
people analyzer
summary of the people analyzer.
You should. It shouldn't just be one person sitting there and ranking it. So, to be honest, if you are a single investor, if you have a spouse or a best friend, just have them interview this person so they can tell you what type of energy they got. Would they like to be trained by this person or see them 3 times a week at the gym? It's really important that it's not just one person going at it. So when we do ours, depending on the position we're hiring for, there's 3 to 4 people in that meeting.
Right. Yeah. And that's key. And so I think if you're hearing this and you're like, wow, that's a lot. Well, yeah, it is a lot. But if there's 2 things that will determine your success in an alloy, or almost in any business, I would say. It's like, certainly in a brick and mortar for us, it's like the location. You can't put it in a bad spot. We have so many checks and balances there. Like you can literally take that off the list of reasons. But the second one is the people. And if you don't run the process, or you think it's too long of a process and you're just going to go by, again, your gut, or you've got a friend of a friend that you think can do it, you're making a big mistake, because this is going to be the determining factor. If you had to ask me, Rick, what's the one crux move of the entire success of the franchise? It's going to be the people that work in those locations. So the reason we put so much emphasis on this, and Chamberlynn just did a full-on webinar for all of our franchisees, just even deep diving more, because we've seen people maybe go a little off process and then they've struggled, and then we've seen people follow process and they've been great. So it's like, listen, you're buying into franchise for a reason, run the play. And if you do, and if you're listening to this and you're not an alloy franchise, build a process, because you think you've got, all these gut and lockout experience. I know who's good, who's not. You really don't. And so running a process, I will tell you, having done it both ways in my career, it's certainly better to have a long and really thoughtful process.
100%.
So if you hear it sounds like too arduous or too many steps, it's not. It's the most important thing for your it's the biggest determining factor for your success, hands down. So why would you not put the most juice into this particular function? Would you agree?
100%. This is customer service. I mean, it's totally different than a product-based business. Amazon warehouse, I'm sure they have people who are gruff or don't get it, want it, or have capacity. But you know what? They can load a box efficiently, and that is what Amazon needs. We need somebody who kind of is the full package. I need you to be able to do the back end. I also need you to be able to be the face and the front end and enjoy it. So this is why, if the process sounds arduous, pre-sale is arduous. It is long. It is
small
tough.
Business is arduous.
Yes, and
get used to it.
Exactly.
And I would tell you that it's not lost on us if things aren't being done with conviction on the front end. We're like, oh boy, because we know what that's saying about how hard we're going to have to try to get you back on track to be a successful franchisee. So run the play. It's the most important decision that you'll make in your business. And yeah, anything else that you want to add?
No, just remember, we're customer service. What is the saying that if it's not until the 7th time you hear something that it actually sinks in? This is customer service. So don't take the easy way and say, I know a personal trainer. We all know personal trainers. And there's a lot of people who tried to do...
My friend of my husband, or a friend of my wife, or my sister's a trainer.
They tried to do a lot of things and they didn't quite cut it. So they thought, I know the body, I can do this. We really are looking for that person that is convicted to having a radical passion for helping people.
Yes.
That is what Alloy is. And so it's one thing to be, my dream in life is to eventually be a stay-at-home mom. It'll probably never happen because I love my job, but it's one thing to become,
we're not going to allow for that.
It's one thing to become a part-time trainer and you are 100% invested in PTA and all those things. I love it. That is the world would not operate if we didn't have those things. But that person's not cut out to work in an alloy. So just because you know of a friend of a friend,
well, they might be as a part-time coach, but they're not as the director.
Not as the director.
Yeah.
And so put them through the process, because honestly, this whole thing we just discussed, it can happen in 1 week. If they are efficient and on it, the time you're looking at is 1 week, but I like to make it go about 2.5 weeks, just so that way I make sure I keep their interest. They're still interested. And also 2.5 weeks is a fraction of what, running an alloy is for 10 years.
Yeah, exactly. For the next 10 years, I might want to spend a couple weeks on it. Yeah. Well, anyway, that's good info, you guys. I hope that helps. If you don't have an alloy, find a way to attract the right candidates, give yourself some bandwidth there, have a screening process, have an interview process based on your core values. If you are with an alloy, we have it all bolted together. Just run the play, and that is it.
It can all be found in the vendor appendix.
Oh, wow. Sounds fancy. Sounds like a body part. Look in your vendor appendix for that, please. Anyway, good having you on.
Oh, do I say goodbye now?
Yeah, you have to say goodbye now. Sorry.
Okay, my podcast time is
Bye,
over.
everybody.
Bye.
Peace.